There's no denying it now. The Royals have hit their low point of the 2024 season. How will they respond? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB. I do some hosting, co-hosting, and producing as well. But when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to get 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Even though the NBA season just wrapped up, still plenty of time to get in on the action with Prize Picks during baseball season, when you can select a couple of players to win you some big-time money, have a Prize Picks lineup, again, winning even more money, but just do so, have some fun over at Prize Picks. We'll have more on them coming up a little bit later on in today's show. As always, questions and comments can be left to my Twitter handle or on our YouTube page at Locked On Royals. This episode, I think, is going to be the first time that I'm not going to give some positive spin. I think I had mentioned it a few weeks back that I wasn't going to hit the panic button. I wasn't going to get overly negative or stuff like that until there was really a reason to be. Having a bad stretch of play, but still holding a 5 or 6 game in the wild card race, I wasn't going to go all doomsday on the followers, on the listeners, because I didn't think it was the right thing to do. I didn't think it was the right approach for an episode. And even though I think a little bit more emotion may come out tonight, or a little bit more negativity may come out tonight, there is the obvious answer to address all of this and just say, well, it's baseball. You're going to go through bad stretches. You're going to lose to bad teams. You're going to lose ground in playoff races. You're going to lose ground in the division. And then when things go well, it's kind of a distant memory. Right now, though, I don't think that's what everybody wants to hear. I could be wrong. Maybe you're one of those listeners that wants to be talked off the ledge. Maybe you're one of those listeners that wants to jump off that ledge and have me join with you and just, go straight down to the depths of despair because of how this baseball team is playing. But there's no denying right now, this is the low point of the 2024 season. And I firmly believe that this series in Oakland is going to be a one that you highlight going back when this season concludes, whether it's in September or they find a way to get into October. You will highlight this series for a couple of reasons. One, it was that first series right after the toughest stretch of the season that you'll have. In terms of the opponents you were playing, the difficulty, all that stuff, this A series was the first chance to start winning some games and get back on track. That is why you would highlight it. Another reason is, well, they haven't played well right now. Okay, they've lost back-to-back games to a team that's one of the worst in Major League Baseball. And if you're listening right now and you just watched that game, maybe you didn't get a chance to watch last night. There's a good chance you don't know any of those A's players. Yet the Royals have lost both of those games that they've played against them, at least in Oakland. They swept them in Kansas City. Wasn't that competitive of a series. And quite honestly, it hasn't been a competitive series in Oakland. The Royals have been terribly flat. It has looked like a disinterested group in this series, and it's totally unacceptable. Now, there's times I will maybe make an excuse when I don't need to with this team. Totally inexcusable. And I feel like the Royals players and coaching staff would say the same. Whether there are 80,000 people or 10 people in the stands, you have to bring the same energy. And the Royals look like they have no energy right now. Zero energy. They had an off day. They had a chance to regroup. It has been a completely different looking team. And I get it. You could say, well, what are you talking about, Jack? They were 7-12 going into this series over the last 19 games. Yeah, but there still was life when they would lose. There was fight. There was passion. There was a fieriness to it. It was undeniable. You aren't seeing that right now. And another point of that in highlighting this series, I think we're going to go one or two ways. That's what I'll say here. I think it's going to go one or two ways from this point on. This will either be the downfall of the team. This will be that series where you look back in September when the Royals are 81-81 or 78-84 and go, well, I remember that we all kind of had that hope until that Oakland series, until that final series in that city playing the A's. The last time at the Coliseum. That was my last series where I had hope for the playoffs. And tomorrow, the Royals will wake up and they will still hold a playoff spot. But I don't need to say that right now because they've lost so much ground and lost all of that cushion to Boston, who's now won 5 in a row, I think. You know, the Twins lost tonight, but they've been red hot. It's not been a good time for the Royals. And I could sit here and spin it in a way that will make you feel better about, well, you know, they still have some easier opponents. They do go to Texas, who's really struggling. That's not the angle we're going to take. That's not the approach we're going to take. And for this series, yeah, it could be looked upon as the downfall. It also could be looked upon as the spark. Sounds crazy, but it could be the spark. That series that really wakes you up as we don't have a cushion anymore. If we want to get to October, if we have that expectation, it's going to be a dogfight until the end, and we can't have another series this year in which we look like this. And that's the hope, right? And we're going to talk about it in segment number 3 about how big tomorrow's game is. But this is the most lifeless I have seen this team in the first 74, 75 games of the season. The most lifeless. I mean, the at-bats that are being had. Some of the tenacity on the mound from starters looks to be gone just for this series. Right, Cole Reagans had a quality start tonight. I don't have any issues with 6 innings and 2 runs. I don't have a single problem with that. I do have a problem with the 4 walks. I do have a problem with the 7 walks on the night. I had a problem last night with Alec Marsh and the leadoff walks. That, to me, is infuriating when playing a team like Oakland. For the Yankees, sure, I get it. Free passes when you're facing Aaron Judge and Gleyber Torres and Giancarlo Stanton and Anthony Volpe, Alex Verdugo. There are guys you want to pitch around. There should be nobody in that A's lineup. No disrespect to the A's. You shouldn't be pitching around them. And I feel like the Royals had been nibbling in this series. And then at the plate, offensively, you faced Hogan Harris and Luis Medina, and the approaches have been poor. So you've had poor approaches on the mound and poor approaches at the plate. And that's why we've seen 2 uncompetitive baseball games. And they are just 2 of 162, but we all know these games go a long way into how the fan base feels about you. And maybe it was my fault, you know, talking up this gauntlet. And once it's over, it's all easy games from here on out. They should go on a tear. You know, maybe that was my fault in building it up. Because, yeah, it is baseball. Last year, I mean, it's crazy to think about this last year. The Royals went into Houston when the Astros were still in a divisional race and a playoff race, and the Royals swept them at home. It can happen. It can happen. But I'm sure Astros fans and Astros talking heads weren't saying, well, it's baseball. No, there was a time to harshly criticize that team, even with their championship pedigree, and go, that's unacceptable at that point in the season. I'm going to do the same thing right now. It's unacceptable to lose to the Oakland Athletics in a spot like right now, when Minnesota's caught fire, when Boston's caught fire, when Cleveland's caught fire. You just played the Yankees and the Dodgers. I know it's not all going to be simple and linear when you improve. There are going to be ups and downs, peaks and valleys. But series like this are not acceptable. And I think Matt Quatrera would say that. I think the leaders in the clubhouse would say that. You cannot have games like that where you're that flat, where the approach is just so poor in every single aspect. I don't care that there's 500 people there to watch the game. And I think the players would say, we don't care. That's not factoring in, but it looks like it. It looks like there's just no juice. There's none. First two games, and that's why tomorrow you would hope to see the juice. But nobody can control that except for those in the dugout, those in the clubhouse. They've been good this year about the quick turnaround time, racing that from your mind. Hopefully we see it tomorrow, but flat is all I can say about these first two games of the series. And now the Royals, for the first time in a while, are in danger of losing a wild card spot. We'll take our first break of the show, come back. Let's talk about this leadoff spot. Let's talk more specifically about Maikel Garcia. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to a couple sponsors today, starting with eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That's eligible items only and the exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is also only available to U.S. customers. We also want to tell you a little bit about our title sponsor today, and that would be Prize Picks. And with Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick it more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. And whether it's strikeouts or RBIs or first inning runs in baseball, you can take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Pick lineup today. You can win up to 100 times your money with baseball-only lineups on Prize Picks. And if you submit a winning lineup featuring 4 Demon Squares, you'll cash in big time in the biggest moments of this baseball season. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Here we are again talking about the leadoff spot, talking about Maikel Garcia. And I think if you've listened to this podcast long enough, you would know that I am very much a Maikel Garcia supporter. I'm a big fan. I think he's got a bright future in Kansas City, but it's undeniable the streakiness that he has had in his young major league career. And streakiness, quite honestly, that can't happen from an everyday player. And that is the cold, hard truth there, right? You can have peaks and valleys. We just said peaks and valleys in the first segment. You can have your ups and downs. You can't go 6 for 52 when you are a leadoff hitter. You can't have those issues of your game where you look like at times you don't even know what you're looking for at the plate, right? I think the funny comment that you can make for a guy that's struggling is he has no idea what's coming to him. Well, that's usually the case if you're facing a good pitcher. You don't know what he's going to throw. However, even guys that are slumping, you kind of know the pitch that you're looking for. You may not be getting that pitch. Like I look at somebody like Nelson Velasquez. Nelson Velasquez, I think, sits dead red fastball 95% of the time. And a dead red fastball, either up in the zone a little bit. I know dead red is down the middle, but up in the zone a little bit, maybe up and in. That's his wheelhouse. No, Maikel Garcia tonight looked like he didn't even know what he was looking for. He's looking at fastballs down the middle. He's swinging at sliders down and away. He's lunging at pitches that are not even close to the plate, not even close to the zone. And we've seen this debate, and we addressed it a little bit on Twitter earlier this afternoon, but of Maikel Garcia being bumped out of the leadoff spot. If the Royals are going to make a push for the playoffs, if they are to win tomorrow and go on a impressive run of 5 of 7, 8 of 9, something like that, they are going to need Maikel Garcia to snap out of this funk quickly. I will also say this. They don't have a leadoff hitter who can replace him at the top. You could say Bobby Witt Jr., right? Put Bobby Witt Jr. at number 1, put Maikel in the 9 hole. I like Bobby Witt Jr. where he's at. I don't feel the urge to move him to the leadoff spot just because he's the best hitter, just because he's quick, just because you want him to get more bats. I like him in the 2 hole. He's thriving in the 2 hole. I don't want to move him from that spot. You move Garcia down, who's the fix? Is it Vinny? Well, just last week, I'm having people in my comments say that, Vinny Pasquantino's not very good and, he's only focused on his image and being this baseball guy, but yet he's not very good over at first base and he's been underwhelming. So why is he now the answer for the leadoff spot? And if you move him up there, all right, so that means you probably have to move Salvador Perez to the 3 hole. Who's protecting Salvador Perez? Who's hitting cleanup? MJ Melendez? Michael Massey? Okay, if you want to put Michael Massey in the cleanup hole, he's barely been healthy this year. He hasn't been healthy for more than 40 games this year. Nelson Velasquez, he's hitting sub 200. Hunter Renfroe, you're going to take one good month of Hunter Renfroe and make him your cleanup hitter. That's where there's a lot of spots in the lineup that have to get consistent to make a move like that, right? And maybe tomorrow you just give Maikel Garcia the day off. Maybe that's the fix that he needs, get right, and he has another stretch that he had from April 17th to May 27th where he went from 164 to 270. Maybe he can have another one of those. We've seen it this year. He's been very hot, and when he's hot, he's magma hot. When he's cold, he is Antarctica type of cold. I mean, unplayable at the top half of the lineup. And yeah, I've been seeing comments about body language, and he looks disinterested, and he's really letting his shoulders slump and all of that. Look, I think that he is naturally a quiet guy. I know we saw the videos in the offseason with the bat flips and the yelling and the pounding in the chest. I think at heart, when he's out there on the field, he's going to be a more keep to himself type of guy, and I haven't really seen too much of a change in the body language. It's easy to look at that when a player is struggling. I just don't know if there is a fit in-house. There could be a fit out of house. The Royals could go out there and trade for a leadoff bat, somebody that can give them more length at the top of the order and take the pressure of Maikel Garcia. Certainly possible. But right now, the most logical option to hit leadoff is Bobby Witt Jr. And at that point, your top 4 gets a little bit weird because then you are putting somebody in a spot they probably shouldn't be in. For the healthy guys right now, let's say tomorrow, Bobby Witt Jr. is leading off for the Royals. How do you construct the lineup? Well, I'd probably say Vinny Pasquantino in the 2 hole, Salvador Perez in the 3 hole to go righty, lefty, righty. And then for cleanup, I mean, if we're just bumping guys up, MJ Melendez in the cleanup spot, hitting 170. Okay, then I'll go, let's see, in the 5 hole, Nick Lofton if he's playing second base. And the 6 hole, I'll go with, let's go with Velasquez, or let's go with Frazier, whoever you want to put there. I mean, that's what I'm getting at here. There's really not the simple fix. And I still think this lineup as a whole is fine. They're in a bad series right now. I still think the overall numbers are pretty good, but they are really struggling right now. And Maikel Garcia is a factor to that. Don't get that twisted in my my rant right there. I don't want to move Bobby Witt Jr. to leadoff spot. I don't think he needs to move when he's hitting so well at the 2-hole. Yeah, if you want to move Maikel Garcia off that spot, that's fine. Just give me somebody who is the best answer. Do you lead off Vinny? Okay, if you lead off Vinny, who's hitting third? Who's hitting fourth? There's just not that obvious answer right now. And I think Matt Quatrero and his staff would rather Maikel Garcia hit his way out of it than to move him down in the order and put somebody else out there who may not do a better job. It's easy to do better than 6 for 52, but over the course of a season, that's going to be the question that they have to answer. Okay, before our final segment, I want to give a shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day, and it brings you canvas analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, let's talk about tomorrow's game and now the significance of it as the Royals look to avoid a sweep for the first time this season. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Want to tell you about a couple more of our sponsors, starting with Policygenius. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect you against some of the unknowns. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace, and it makes choosing the right policy for your family easy and quick. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks. Their award-winning agents can even walk you through this process step by step. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Also want to let you know about Tax Network USA. Here on Locked On Royals, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years experience and A-plus rating by Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, you have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. That's tnusa.com/lockedon, and you can see the link in this episode description below. All of the sudden, tomorrow's afternoon game, the series finale in Oakland, becomes massive. I think everybody knew that. We teased that at the beginning of the show, and if you were watching the game tonight, you probably looked at Sunday's game and said, this could really dictate how I feel about this team moving forward. And even though it's one series, even though it's one game or 3 games, it does go a long way. If the Royals get swept for the first time this year by the Oakland Athletics, it would take a lot of the wind out of the sails of this season. It would take a lot of the steam from this great start. And if Boston wins tomorrow, the Royals will wake up on Friday out of the playoff spot. They will have lost all that cushion. And that gauntlet, surviving it, it won't really matter. You won't even be thinking about the gauntlet anymore. Think about how long ago that win on Saturday against the Dodgers feels. They've lost 3 in a row. They were competitive on Sunday, and then just 2 atrocities in Oakland. Absolute atrocities in terms of performance. And now you go to Seth Lugo. But also, I thought tonight, and I was wrong in my tweet, I was wrong in an interview today, Cole Reagans against Luis Medina. whose ERA was near 6, who had 15 innings on the year. He outduels Cole Reagans. So, yeah, tomorrow I could say, well, you got Seth Lugo on the bump. I could say that. I could take that positive spin. Or I could say, I just hope the team shows up. I hope a different version of the team shows up. The team from May and their 8-game winning streak. That team, I hope, shows up. Because whatever this version is right now, it ain't good enough. It ain't good enough at all. Everybody knows that. I'm no guru in saying that. I'm no baseball know-how in saying that what they're doing right now, only winning 2 of their last 10 games or 2 of their last 8 games, I mean, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. And there are a lot of fingers to point at different players, decisions being made, front office. I get it, right? I get there are a lot of people to blame, but it happens too. And the good thing about baseball, why baseball is my favorite sport, why I love being able to even just bring you episodes like this. It's only one day. It's only one day. It's only one game. And I fully expect at some point, and take this for what it is, I fully expect there to be a stretch of games where it's fun to do this podcast. It's fun to interact with people. It's fun to talk about the possibilities. I envision that happening again. I can't tell you where they'll be in the standings. I can't tell you what this team will look like. But in the same way we felt doing this podcast when they had won 8 in a row, maybe they don't get to 8 in a row again, but maybe there's a stretch where they win 7 of 8. They win 8 of 10 instead of losing 2 of 10 or 8 of 10. It's hard to do episodes. I'll be completely honest, completely candid. It's hard to do episodes sometimes when you are watching bad baseball. I hope that it stays consistent, that the listenership continues to go up, that we can have fun banter back and forth, that we can talk about this team in a healthy manner, whether it be, frustrated about the team or positive about the team, all that. I hope it can continue in a healthy manner. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy doing this. I enjoy covering this team. I enjoy talking about this team. But there are definitely times, there are definitely post games, there are definitely nights I'm going, I'm exhausted. I don't really want to talk about this. I'm too frustrated. I got 50, 60 people commenting how they're not going to watch anymore and they hate this team and yada, yada, yada. I get it. Everybody has their own emotions and how they deal with losses. I have my own ways of doing it. And after tonight's game, I was going to put out something like, this felt like a breaking point, a boiling point. It's weird to say when you're still 7 games over 500, but it's what I truly felt like at the moment. But I refrained. Because it's not a breaking point for everybody. It's just a breaking point for some people. And tomorrow, even though I'm putting an emphasis on the game, still not the end-all, be-all. The end-all, be-all is what you're doing in September. You got to put yourself in a good position. Now, the best-case scenario here, they salvage 1 game. You go, I'm getting the hell out of Oakland. Never going to have to play there again, actually. You head over to Arlington. We'll be down there for a couple of the games. And you get a much different version against Pack Stadium, a team that's struggling, but you don't look at them in the same way you look at Oakland. That's the hope. But I'll finish with this. Baseball has that effect on you. And if you're not a baseball fan or this is new to you or you're slowly getting back into it, I think the toughest part is that this year has very much felt game to game. That the wins you feel really good about, the losses you feel really terrible about. But in that same conversation, they play every single day. Of course, they have an off day every once in a while, but they play every single day. And I'm going to go to bed tonight irritated, angry, upset, pretty mellowed out with how the team has played. It's not as fun, not as energetic to talk about this team, but we do it anyway. We do it anyway because I know there's people that want to talk about this team. And tomorrow, if they win, Probably a much happier episode tomorrow. If they lose, probably a lot of the same tonight as we gave you in tonight's episode. But a bad stretch of play, they are clinging for dear life onto their playoff spot, but there is still more than a half of the season to go. Who knows what the standings are going to look like in a few weeks, in a few months at the end of the year. We only hope that the Royals can be right there in the thick of it when it's all said and done. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson, and you can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Tomorrow, we're hopefully going to recap a win for the Kansas City Royals. Seth Lugo will be on the bump. If it's a win, we'll talk about that and preview the upcoming series in Arlington. If it's a loss, maybe another episode of where we go from here. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.